Davros is one of the most recognisable and iconic sci-fi villains of all time. If you haven't guessed from his appearance, he's the creator of the Daleks from Doctor Who. Originally part of a humanoid species, the Khaleds, Davros continuously experimented on his own kind to protect them from nuclear warfare, after an incident had left him disfigured and missing limbs. He pioneered technology to create his own life support machine that went on to form the basis of the Daleks, as the power-mad scientist pushed his creation further and further to ultimately create the most evil beings in the universe. Fast forward to 2023. Doctor Who's 60th anniversary is imminent, everything is looking up for the franchise, and we get a brand new Children in Need special for the first time in years. Russell T Davies is back writing, David Tennant is back as the Doctor, and we get to see Julian Bleach, the fantastic actor who plays Davros, without prosthetics for the first time, as this is set prior to Davros' accident. It's jarring at first, but it's a cool concept and overall a fun mini episode for Children in Need. But just as I was about to let out a sigh of relief that the show could finally just be good entertainment again, we got this behind the scenes look at the creation of the episode.
Davros first appeared in Doctor Who in the 1975 story Genesis of the Daleks. He was depicted as a wheelchair user.
Davros is an insane genius scientist responsible for multiple genocides, and that's what first comes to mind when thinking of the character.
He was depicted as a wheelchair user.
Now, this was just odd because never in my life have I ever heard Davros referred to as a wheelchair user. I mean, you could call it that, but does this look like a wheelchair to any of you? It has no wheels and isn't really a chair. Not to mention every single Dalek is also held within such a casing, just with the top half on, so are they all wheelchair users now? Then Russell T Davies comes on, and with each word that he spoke, I felt like I was in one of those Vertigo shots where the background shifts as, you know, the realisation of what was happening hit.
Time and society and culture and taste has moved on, and there's a problem with the Davros of old in that he's a wheelchair user who is evil.
I have never felt such bewilderment and disbelief towards a statement. Like, I was waiting for the punchline, but he just stares at the camera with absolute conviction that what he's saying is right.
I had problems with that, and a lot of us on the production team had the problems with that, of associating disability with evil.
The implication here is that because Davros is an evil dictator who happens to be confined to something that resembles a wheelchair, the general public will see Davros on screen and perceive wheelchair users in the real world as evil. This is the thought process going on in this man's head, and I had a huge amount of respect for Russell T Davies as a writer, but this is not rational. It opens this whole can of worms of, so evil people have to look a certain way, whereas disabled people cannot be evil. It's basing the characteristics of people off their appearance, which is how people used to prosecute criminals like hundreds of years ago. That this is really outdated stuff. And then how far do you take that? Who can and can't be evil? You can see how this becomes instantly problematic. It's a paradox as you end up creating new stereotypes and trying to erase old ones with your own subjective set of rules.
So we made the choice to bring back Davros without the facial scarring and without the wheelchair or his support unit, which functions as a wheelchair.
But surely that decision was based on the fact that this is a prequel set before Davros' accident, right?
I say this is how we see Davros now.
And there's the bombshell.
This is what he looks like. This is 2023. This is our lens. This is our eye. Things used to be in black and white. They're not in black and white anymore. And Davros used to look like that, and he looks like this now.
The implications of this are ludicrous beyond comprehension. The last time we saw Davros, he looked like this. And now we're expected to just accept Davros as a guy who isn't crippled and scarred by nuclear warfare, which is the literal origin story of the Daleks. Not to mention, without the iconic chair that makes Davros Davros. You know, that's just what he is. Like, I've got a Davros here, which was bought for us at a market because it was the half Dalek man. Now, you can't avoid that. It's just everything the character is. The story we've been told over the decades is reflective of this appearance, and vice versa. Are fans expected to be ashamed to own merchandise of Davros now and watch the old episodes that he's in? But speaking of 1975's Genesis of the Daleks, which introduced Davros, is one of the most pivotal and highly regarded stories in the show's history. Then it was none other than Russell T Davies who brought back Davros in 2008 for The Stolen Earth and Journey's End, which many would consider to be the absolute peak of Doctor Who's success. It was phenomenal entertainment that was gripping, exciting and terrifying, with the return of Davros being hugely anticipated. If you look at behind the scenes stuff from that episode, you can see the absolute infectious joy brought to the cast and crew at seeing Davros, this iconic classic character, realised in front of them.
One of my earliest memories of Doctor Who is Davros. It was 1975, so I was a very small child, absolutely captivated by this extraordinary creature.
And to jump from that to this bleak alternate reality in 2023 is just staggering and perplexing, especially when hearing Russell T Davies' comments on Davros at the time.
It's quite important to remember, I think, this is literally Davros.
A brilliant creation.
It's literally the same man. So I wasn't out to reinvent it in that sense.
Excellent.
And also, why reinvent one of the best villains ever? I don't know what more you add to Davros.
What people liked about RTD was that he was a huge fan himself. He knew how important Davros was to the fans, so the modernisation of Davros was executed perfectly, and he literally comments on the timelessness of the design and says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
We're not reinventing a classic, we're refurbishing a classic, I think, and reintroducing it to a brand new generation. It's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
To jump from that to this is like a complete personality transplant.
He's a wheelchair user who is evil.
Now, some people online are very angry at other people for even discussing this topic if they're not wheelchair users themselves. I'm not, but I've decided to talk about it because neither is Russell T Davies. There are masses of comments opposing this decision, many of which are from disabled people. Because as it turns out, he's speaking on behalf of people that don't want to be spoken for. I've seen fans who enjoyed cosplaying as Davros because of their disability, because he's a cool, scary and intimidating character, whilst others even viewed him as an inspirational figure due to the sheer amount that he accomplished using only his mind and willpower, despite being physically disabled. Yes, Davros was misguided and used his intelligence for evil, but anyone can see that he so easily could have been a hero. Like, that's Davros' story. He was originally the saviour of this race before he just kept going, took it too far, and became the villain that we know him as today. To suggest his evilness is somehow tied to the use of a chair is utterly absurd, whilst the decision to just enable a disabled character without explanation makes a mockery of the fans, the narrative, and just about everything the show stands for. Any level of joy and hope I had for the 60th anniversary has been completely dashed. If Russell T Davies is prepared to completely reinvent a staple character like Davros without any narrative explanation other than times have changed, it's 2023, then that speaks volumes about the rest of the series, and absolutely nothing is safe.
All the nights to make this change, I thought it was absolutely vital to do this.
To celebrate children in need, we made a crippled character walk.
And I'm very, very, very proud of the fact that we have.
So in response to Russell, this is something that I don't feel comfortable with, and clearly the large majority of the fans don't. It's a skewed perspective on people that's not true to life. This is not how people work. The one thing keeping us sane throughout this is that every other YouTube comment I've read in response to this video also opposes the decision. I really hope this is not the end of Davros in the wheelchair. Disabled people are not fragile little weak things that need to be treated gently. They're human beings just like anyone else. They can be nice and sweet, but they can also be evil and the worst people you've ever met. Acting like we can't have a villain in a wheelchair is going too far. It's like saying we can't have a black person as a bad guy or someone gay as a villain. Yeah, the logic is completely flawed, And if anything, this is now reducing the opportunities for disabled people to play villainous characters. Like, if someone who happens to be disabled wants to play a villain, then where does Russell T Davies stand on that? And if this was a genuine issue that upset people, which it never has been as far as I can tell, the obvious answer would be to introduce good characters in wheelchairs to balance it out, which they're already doing. So this is completely redundant. Sabotaging the legacy of the show, erasing one of its most iconic character designs, and subsequently one of the most compelling narratives that Doctor Who has ever told. Something that I just can't get over is that by declaring Davros' life support unit as a wheelchair, you are declaring that every Dalek is a wheelchair user. You can't get around that. This is half a Dalek. If this is, in your eyes, a wheelchair, these are all wheelchair users. You're going to raise the Daleks next? You know, they all contain mutated Khaleds that used to be humanoid. So at which point does it stop being a disabled man and become a mutated creature? Who has the right to decide that? It's problematic because you are linking science fiction entertainment, which is not real, to society and culture and taste. But it's not Earth in 2023, it's the planet Skaro thousands of years ago in a distant galaxy. I doubt this will change anything, and the whole thing feels beyond saving at this point.
He looks like this now, and that we are absolutely standing by.
But please do leave your thoughts down below. But most importantly, I wanted to celebrate Davros' impact as a character over the last 40 years. From his iconic first appearance in 1975 to some of the deepest and evocative television I've ever seen with Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor in 2015.
Protect your own, as I have sought to protect mine.
Davros never had been defined by his disability. People never even saw it as such because he was such a naturally empowered character. You felt threatened when Davros was in the room despite him being in this wheelchair. Surely the fact that it was on nobody's mind is a good thing. Davros was defined by being the most cunning, ruthless and at times relatable Doctor Who villain. And that's what the character will be remembered as, regardless of whatever the hell happens next.